everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And you're here with Bettina and Jim. Welcome to the Night Raven show. This is for truth seekers, storytellers, and lovers of the unknown. Remember, the Night Raven is a show of its own, but it's also a network for like minded voices and for those who believe in the power of storytelling and sharing wisdom and information to change the world for the better. Check out my website. It's nightofthe.raven.com, where you can actually book me for readings, and you can also check out my new metaphysical apparel. My motto is stay curious, stay awake, and question everything. And today I have with me my really good friend, and I'm just so excited he agreed to this. His name is Jim Ditty. He is a shaman, but I will let him talk about himself because I don't want to leave anything out. He's such a powerful shaman and such a good person. And I'm just so excited he's here on the show with me. So, Jim, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First off, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate this. Um,
Yes.
so I've been a shamanic practitioner now for I don't know probably 3 or 4 years. I really leaned into the shamanic side.
Yeah.
So what a shamanic practitioner does is they use uh, different methods, either through meditation or drumming or sacred plants.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of different ways, but it's to kind of achieve that state where they can experience non-ordinary realities. That's a Carlos Castaneda term that he coined.
What's
But
a non-ordinary reality for those
so
people who don't know what that is?
okay, so that would be to have maybe an out-of-body experience, a
Uh-huh.
visionary experience. From my perspective, non-ordinary realities are those other dimensions through the veil that you don't necessarily see here in this like 3D mundane world, right?
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
uh, it'd be visiting other worlds. I also think the other worlds are really just inner worlds. It's just a facet of our cosmos,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So
So is this something you have to achieve every time before you heal someone, like a different state of mind?
no, I think those periods of non-ordinary reality,
Mm-hmm.
it's a learning thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's for us to either gather information or gather insight or maybe come to a little different understanding about how things work and how things are put together.
Right.
And so we sort of have that experience, and the experience itself is valuable, but it's really about the integration, like how you put that experience together. Because
Right.
I've seen a lot of people over the years, and they all have an experience. Like one time it just said they lived in a house that was haunted, and they used to see things or this and that,
Right. Right.
and so they continue to have those sorts of experiences, but they never really put it together and look for the deeper meaning. You know.
Yes.
So it kind
Absolutely.
of turns into this one time at band camp story, and they just have a long laundry list of these stories. But it's like, okay, so if this keeps happening to you, it must mean something, right? So
Right.
like
Absolutely.
you put the pieces together and try to get meaning out of it, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
so I don't if I'm doing a healing session, I don't have to achieve that state. Uh, that being said, having achieved a vibrational state for a non-ordinary reality, once you integrate it, it's a memory. Now it becomes part of you, right? Because you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it would be like perhaps it would be like if you tap into the Akashic records to do a reading, it's a different vibration, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
it's different than reading a tarot card. It just
Mm-hmm.
has because I've been to the Akashic a couple times. It's very to me it feels very sterile. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a different energy. But once
It
you've been
is.
to that
Mm-hmm.
state, then
Mm-hmm.
now you recognize the state. So
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
in order to re-achieve that state, for me, it's just to kind of remember how that felt and remember that experience, and then I can be back in that same sort of awareness.
Cool. Cool. And I don't know much about shamanism, but I think some shamans or some practitioners they use some kind of maybe a substitute, like a substance or something to reach an altered state of mind. Do you think everybody does that, or is it just up to the person? Like some, you know what
No,
I'm
like
saying?
yeah, like I said, there's lots of different ways. You can do
Uh
it with
huh.
deep meditation. You
Mm-hmm.
can do it with fasting. You can do it with sleep. Like Native Americans do vision quests where they fast and they don't sleep for 3 days, and
Wow. Oh my gosh.
you know, Christians in antiquity would flagellate themselves and use pain to reach a state of ecstasy. Hindus have ecstatic dance.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's right. Yes.
yeah. So even if you, I'm a huge fan of the snake churches in Appalachia, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you know, other than taking up serpents and what the Bible says, if you look at the mechanism of what they do energetically,
Mm-hmm.
um, they dance, they pray, they raise their vibrational state until, as the
Okay.
practitioners say, until they
Yes.
feel the anointing of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is a shift into a vibrational state where now they're in an elated or they're in an out of
Mm-hmm.
body experience, right?
Wow.
So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Cool. Yeah, I did ask you to come on here to talk about something else, but I'm just so interested. It's just so interesting to talk to about all that. So we're getting into the shamanism a little bit more, but I just want to know about you. And you said you're practicing for like 3 or 4 years. What made you do that? Was that a long road? I mean, I know for me or for other people, sometimes it's a process. You know, you don't wake up one day and then you decide to do this. It's just like a long process of things happening to you, or like breadcrumbs that spirit lays out for you, you know? And if you could like quickly or maybe briefly talk about, what led you to become a shaman.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It's been a long road for me. It's probably been a every bit of a 20-year journey. You know.
Yeah.
So I started a spiritual awakening. It was kind of traumatic.
It always is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, because I'm pretty stubborn, right? So it
Yes.
has to be something traumatic to get through my hard headedness. Right?
Like a 2x4 over the head.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. Yeah, and so it felt like I
Yeah.
came face to face with myself in a dark alley, and
Yeah.
only one of us was getting
Absolutely.
out of there, right? So,
Yep. Yep.
and then once I realized that everything I thought I had figured out, that I didn't have anything figured out really, that would probably be the rebirth point for me. So
Yeah.
and then
Exactly.
so step by step, I kind of I consumed a lot of stuff on the internet at first because I was like I sort of woke up with all this esoteric knowledge I'd never been exposed to, and I was able to manipulate energy. I was doing channeling. I was doing mediumship, and I was like, okay, so there's no.
You did. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I was very mundane, right? I mean, I was very much rooted into this sort of 3D thing, and
Yeah.
work. And if you asked me what God was, I would say it was money. And you know,
Yeah.
and so now I just came alive with all this stuff that like, how do I know this? And so I was consuming things online, and then it got to the point where Google has an answer for everything, right? Like
Yes.
it really does. Now,
It does. Yes.
whether it's an accurate answer or not,
It has a answer
right?
or
And
an
then
answer.
20 years ago, it wasn't even Google, right? It was Yahoo search engines, and
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
you sort of had to go to the different search engines and compare
Mm-hmm.
notes and pick the best two out of three.
Yep.
So I went to a show, a typical new agey type metaphysical fair,
Yeah.
and that kind of sent me down a rabbit hole, and so I consumed some of that. And I thought I was new age for a while, and then uh, that kind of fell away, and so I don't think we really know what we are or who we are until we start figuring
Yep.
out what and who we're not, right? So
Yep.
you
You
have
rule
you have to try
everything out. Yeah.
and I love that you said at the beginning that you should question things because I've always had those sort of trust issues. Even as a kid, I didn't believe something just because a teacher told me. I wanted to
Yeah.
see it for myself.
I I I feel you. I had the same thing. It's I don't know. I've
Yeah,
always been that way, but I didn't know what I was or where I want to go until I got much older. And as a healer or a reader or a person who's going down that path, we go through a lot of dark places too, and it kind of shapes us. And I'm not excited about it, but I feel like everybody I ever talked to about who reached this point, they had a lot of trauma in their lives, and maybe we had to go through that in order to prepare us for this point in our lives. So I think it's part of it, the pain.
I wrote about something like that years ago because I think because the people I see sort of in that are going through this or in the metaphysical community all sort of
Uh-huh.
started on the fringe.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very common story, right? They didn't feel like they fit in as a kid, or they always felt awkward,
Exactly.
and and I think what that did uh, is it sort of set them up to look at things differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they've always been able to stand back and then look at the situation because
Yeah.
they've always done that. Either they didn't feel
Yeah.
included or whatever, right? And so I think it's easier to see an alternate reality or see through that veil a little bit
Yeah.
if you've been looking for it. And that's why my
Mm-hmm.
awakening was very traumatic because I never looked through that, right?
Mm.
And all of a sudden, okay, so here it is, and I was like,
Here it is.
yeah, I didn't. I questioned my sanity a lot, and then because I was talking about it because like this is a lot, right?
It's a
And
lot. It's
and
a lot.
so I figured out very quickly that you have to be careful who you talk about that to because trying to
Yes,
they were
that's
trying to
very
medicate
true.
me with things that.
Yeah. Yep. You think everybody's open to that until you realize they're not, and they look at you like you have a screw loose, and then you're like, okay, wait a minute, I need to find my tribe.
Yeah,
That's another thing where finally you wake up, but then you realize you're even more out of place than what you thought. And then you have to find your people, and it all falls into place over time, and it's a very painful road.
you know where I found a lot of support through that time was
What?
the typical Western Christian religions. So those folks could just take a look at me and see I was going through something,
Uh-huh.
and they would ask me, well, how are you? And I was like, well, I'm okay. And they're like, no, really, how are you? I was like, you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
Yeah.
And they were like, try me. And I told them, and they absolutely they're the only ones that didn't think I was crazy, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, that's spirit, right? And
It's spirit.
they didn't call it Jesus, they didn't call it God. They're like, oh no, that's spirit. They know that happens.
Yeah.
And and I was like, because I never really been religious. I wasn't
Yeah.
raised in church. And I was like, wow. Uh, so there's a warm spot in my heart for him for that because
Mm-hmm.
had it not been and just random people,
Yeah.
uh, what we would call very intuitive, just random people that I'd be passing by on the street or see at the grocery store. Just perfect strangers, and I was like, wow. I mean, they really got me through that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I sort of sampled the New Age thing and enough to realize I'm not really New Age, and uh, I didn't really lean towards paganism at first because my experience with pagans were all Wiccans, right? And that, I didn't feel like the Wiccan path was my way.
Yeah.
And then I was doing an event, and somebody described paganism as a nature-based religion,
That's
and
what
I
I heard too. Yeah.
and I thought to myself, whoa, wait a minute, I can get behind that,
Yeah.
and 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 so I will self-identify as a pagan sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
and so the move into shamanism, I think, was just me looking for something a little richer, a little
Mm-hmm.
deeper.
That resonates.
Yes, and
That kind of speaks to your soul and who you are on a soul level or your essence.
yeah. Well, I mean, as you go to shows and
Mm-hmm.
like I know a lot of the workshops and stuff at shows are
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
uh, kind of structured for the beginner or somebody just coming into it, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, I think everything we do is sort of a reflection of where we're at
Yeah. I
to or it
agree.
should be, right?
I agree.
Um, and so for me, it was like, okay, I need to go deeper. I need more
Yeah.
now. I need more substance to it.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's kind of where
It's
I'm
kind of
at.
good.
Yeah.
Well, knowing you, I know you have a lot of deep thoughts, and I really invited you on here today and hope you're coming back in the future because I want to get those deep thoughts out of you. And today's topic is actually how we got disconnected and why it matters. So I would like for you to just get your thoughts out there and talk about this topic a little bit. And just for the viewers, maybe you can define when you say how we got disconnected. What are you talking about, or what are you thinking about? Disconnected from what?
Okay. Yeah. Because I use that word connection a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's relative, right? So if I say connection, people kind of put that in the context of what that means to them.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Connection for me has always uh, sort of been to the things that are very concrete and real. You know, um, for example, none of us are born with a political affiliation.
Yeah.
None of us are born with a particular religious bias.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're born, and then what our connection is our family, right?
Yes.
So we're born into a family unit. Uh, you know, mother, father, ancestors, grandparents, whether we
Mm-hmm.
know them or not. I mean, we have that family unit, and so that's sort of that's sort of what we're born to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it, and I see us as humans as not like we are nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'll talk about connection. People tell me, well, yes, I love to be out in nature, but my view is you are nature. You're
Yeah.
in nature, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because we share this little gift called life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're born. We have the same seasons in our life that Mother Earth has. We have a spring, winter, spring, summer, fall, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, all plants share the same thing. They have a life cycle, and it's all a cycle. It's very cyclical,
Mm-hmm.
and so that right there, I think, kind of connects us to the rest of the planet, to the rest of everything. Like crystals don't have this, right?
Right.
Right. Crystals a very static energy, and there's no cycle to it. It lays there for a billion years till somebody digs it up, right?
Oh, okay.
So uh, that's really the sort of connection I'm talking about, and as a human being, I think that um, I don't really see us as being uh, the top of the pyramid, right? I see us as a misbehaved primate species, right?
Yeah, I agree. I
That
agree.
has a lot of commonalities
Yes.
with other primate species, right?
I mean, we think we're up there, but we're really not. I think we have a lot of growing to do and a lot of evolving to do.
Yes. And so that's a disconnect point
Mm-hmm. Yes.
for me. The whole point of shamanic practice is to learn to live in right relationship and balance
Mm-hmm.
with the natural world.
Right.
And so I think when we're in that sort of balance, it's very hard to do the things we do to the ecology, right? It's very
Mm-hmm.
hard to do the things we do to each other, right?
Yes.
So I mean, when you look at your other human beings as relatives, regardless of the color of the skin, uh, we're all relatives. We're all sharing this little thing called life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't. Or you hear people talking about they channel the energy, or they think they're an alien race that's down here to help Earth. That could be, I don't know, but I'm very invested in this human life right here on
Yeah.
Earth.
Well,
So
that's what we have, and that's what we live right now. So we have to be in the present. You know.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the sort of connection I'm talking about, right?
Okay.
Kind of connecting where it's not about those interpersonal relationships, or friendships or family.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a spiritual connection, I think. Is
Like the spiritual connection with yourself or your higher self.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, kind of resting in that center, which
Mm-hmm.
that could be another topic, but I
Oh,
don't
I'm
think
sure. Well.
yeah. I think that our consciousness is a universal consciousness that we all
Yes.
share, right?
Yes.
And so if you connect to that, then you're connected to every living being, right?
Yeah.
So
I just thought about something. I saw something the other day on TV, and it's Gaia TV, and I don't know if you're familiar with that channel, but they were talking about something similar where they say that when we're born a blank slate, and then we're conditioned through our parents, and then we see life through that lens of that conditioning. So when you were talking about the connection, what spirit told me in that moment was when they want us or when they encourage us to go back to that connection, it's going back to that point when you were born, when you were a blank slate and you're not conditioned to view something through the lens of somebody else that gave you that condition or that programming, you know.
absolutely, I think in the Bible they talk about a child entering the kingdom of heaven, right? So
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yes.
you know, I don't know. I think the human being's greatest gift is maybe their forebrain,
Mm-hmm.
but and that's sort of self awareness. But I think that's also a huge curse. You know,
Yeah. Because
uh,
you have to deal with yourself. You have to deal with why you're here and what's your purpose, what's your mission, how to treat others, how to treat yourself, things like that.
right? And I think maybe the Bible's got some of that right. I mean, maybe the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden was that moment when we became self aware,
Yeah.
and now you know now we create environments or we create realities or narratives for ourselves that may not fit. I mean, maybe it's delusional.
Yeah.
But what I found is just I mean, for me, it's about we're all living on planet Earth, so that's our mother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the sun gives life to everything, and so that's our father. And I watch the cycles of that, and in seasons, and just it's all in rhythm, right? So it all breathes, it expands, it contracts, and so that's where I feel very connected. And and it's sort of like a hologram because I see that happening outside. I see that in
Mm-hmm.
Mother Nature, but that happens in us too, right?
Yeah.
We have the same sort of ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start realizing that it truly is as above and so below, right? Like nothing's different. It's just it's an
Yeah.
application. It's a huge connection point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean that disconnection point. I think the United States is particularly bad because like we're the newest nation on the planet, right? Not the continent, but the newest nation. So
Yeah.
every almost every continent in the world has a city older than the United States of America,
That is true.
and so
Very
for
true.
the most part we were colonized, right? Other than the indigenous people that are already here, we were colonized by people that were running from something, right?
Yeah.
So they were fleeing war, they were fleeing famine, religious persecution, whatever. They wanted a chance to make their own way, and so they came here.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think especially after our government was formed, that was a trade-off. We'll open our arms and accept you, but here's the thing: now you have to adopt the American way. Now you have to adopt
Mm-hmm.
the philosophy and the credo of the United States of America.
So now you have to conform to it.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to be an American now, you have to
Yeah. You have to accept that
whatever.
at face
Yeah,
value and not question it.
yeah. So if you look at people that immigrate to the country, typically the parents will maybe they struggle with English. They'll keep the native language. The firstborn children will speak it in the home. By the second generation, they no longer speak the language
Yeah.
of their
That's true.
grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just the language. I think they lose a lot of things. I think they lose their cultural heritage. Uh, they may or may not lose their taste in cuisine and food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because other countries they talk about McDonald's and you get over here and like, oh my god, like why would you want to come across the ocean to eat McDonald's? I don't know. It's healthier over
I
there.
tell you, I can tell you from experience because, people who don't know me, I was born and raised in Germany, but when I first came here, this was like, I mean, now when I look at Germany, it's like, this is so cool. We have all these old castles and history and this and that. But when you grow up there, you don't see it as such. It's just, you always look at something else. And maybe that's human nature. You always look at something else. It's like, oh, this is exciting. I need to go there. You see all the lights of Las Vegas and this is where you want to be because it's so cool and so exciting. So that's what it is. You feel drawn to the excitement, to the lights, literally. Something exotic and something new and different. So that's kind of the experience that I had.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot because for a long time now the United States has been uh, that's the American dream, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the American dream is alive and well everywhere except America.
You may be right at this point. I think
Yeah,
it changed.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's not. This was a place for people to come to, and they could worship how they
Mm-hmm.
want to worship, and they could do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think just sort of it's fallen off now. What I think that's done because I look at this, I look at the whole spiritual movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess I started here maybe it was prior to 2012, maybe the early 2000s is when they really started pushing that. And there were some channelers. Lee Carroll was good about that. He was channeling Cryon
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
pushing this to the dawn of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very new agey, right? Like this is the
Yep.
new age. But
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the history of new age, they've been talking about this since the 1800s. With
Yeah, it's really not new age. It's just
right,
coming back, you
right.
know?
So the Spiritists and Madame Blavatsky was great, and they were doing
Mm-hmm.
seances and stuff in the 1800s because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's always right. We're on the cusp of a great change, but um, I think change is a universal constant, right? So we're always on the cusp of a great change. Um, I'm, you know, I'm still, I'm still waiting for it to get here. But uh,
Do you think it's changed for the better?
so I think, Gandhi's attributed the quote that "Be the change you wish to see." I think that was an Oprah thing. I think Oprah
Mm-hmm.
brought that mainstream. But what he actually said is everything that exists outside the world exists also within us.
Mm-hmm.
And as a man changes his nature, so his relationship with the world changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very possible to make this change, but it's not going to come from outside.
Right.
I think we each have to do the work. So, and that's been my experience. That is my view and my world views changed, then things around me have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really do think we create our own reality to some
Yeah.
extent. Right? Like you and I are creating each other in this moment, moment by moment. So,
Yeah. You're right.
uh,
Right.
but I mean, that kind of involves taking responsibility to do that co-creation, right? Like,
And I think a lot of people don't want to do that because then with responsibility comes more responsibility, you know? And people don't want to do that. It's
it,
almost better to be a victim and let everybody else decide over your life than to just stand up and say, "You know what? I'm going to create my own life."
it's much easier to believe that
Yeah.
life is happening to you
Uh-huh. Exactly.
because maybe you didn't start off in the best social or economic status, or maybe your parents were mistreated you, or maybe your parents overindulged you. It's easy
Mhm.
to believe that.
Right.
Um, but that's just where you start, right? And
Mhm.
so we all have free will. It's easy enough to change. And I think what you were talking about earlier, all those sort of things we're programmed and preconditioned for. Uh, it's funny to me that humans are the only animal on the planet that keeps their young with them 18 years, right?
Do you think that's too long?
I do, but I actually think it's part of the plan, right? So,
Okay.
so bears and elephants might be 3 years tops, uh, and that's a lot. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, so here's how to feed yourself, and now go forth and so what I see is after about 5 or 6 years old,
Uh-huh.
uh,
Send
what
them into the wild.
yeah, so what parents do is like we sort of put all this baggage and all these preconceived ideas
Yeah.
in the child's mind, and then many of us spend most of our young adult years into our mid adult years, or maybe more, trying to unlearn that programming
Mhm.
and to get back to figuring out their own way. You know,
Yeah.
uh, but I think that's a I think I think maybe that's a blessing. I I we grow from adversity, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's what your parents are supposed to do. They're supposed to put all this stuff in there for you to overcome. This
Yeah,
is
I think mine gave me a lot to overcome.
yeah,
So,
this is sort of your
I mean,
curriculum for this life, right?
for
I
real.
mean, we love you, and we're trying to. Cause for the most part, they're trying to do the best. They don't realize.
Yeah, I know.
So we're
Right.
going to load you up with all this stuff. You're going to spend 30 years unlearning, right, before you actually figure out what you want to do. But at the end of it, that's your
That's
life.
your life path.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird twist, right? But
It is. It is. It's almost like your younger years when you have the energy to maybe create your own life. You're still so wrapped up in your own problems and your own conditions and programming that you don't. I mean, I didn't. I can't speak for everybody else, but I mean, I'm now in my 50s and now I'm now starting finally figuring out what it is that I want. I'm like, man, I'm tired. I just want to sit on the couch. It's like, why now? Not why not sooner? But I guess it is the way it is. It's I don't know.
Well, I think that's part of that season, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
born in our youth is the spring, and then in the summertime, everything on the planet's busy in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's growing, it's harvest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe in the 50s and 60s, it's a change of life correction time now, right?
Yeah,
So
I
we're
agree.
coming into the harvest season of it, and we're able to look back and say, hey, maybe that wasn't all that important, or maybe I could have done that a little bit differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I don't know if that's something we're going to carry forward, if we carry that memory forward into the next life, or um,
I hope so. Once I heard, and well, it wasn't from a person. I did a reading for somebody a long time ago, and spirit just reminds me of what I heard. And what I heard was that there are people out there, and maybe souls out there, who, when you have a certain birthmark, you gave yourself that birthmark to remind yourself in your next life where to start, so you don't forget everything that you learned in your previous life. Because in a way, I always questioned myself. It's like, so I'm making all this progress in this lifetime, right? So when I go into the next lifetime, do I have to start from zero? That's not fair. So, how
yeah,
can I remind myself to not start from zero in the next lifetime? And then Spirit was like, well, you can give yourself a birthmark that reminds you of where you left off. So maybe that's a thing. I don't know. I don't have one that I know. So
yeah,
maybe I started zero from this lifetime.
yeah. The problem is we can't test that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you're going to have to do a wing and a prayer on that, and like, because you may come out in the next life and say, "What's that? That's an odd mark."
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, maybe that's a thing. Who knows? There's
yeah.
so many things that it's so many things I think about, and it's just so vast. I think that our human minds cannot comprehend even half of everything that's going on, and maybe that's why we need more than one lifetime to figure it all out. I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of those non-ordinary realities I visited. I mean, they're a place without words, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just color and
Mhm.
vibration, and there's an understanding. It's very hard to put those experiences into words because there's no words there, right? I mean,
No, there isn't.
words are absolutely a limitation.
Yep.
And I think it's a limitation too. Like I try to avoid labels, like calling myself, well, I'm this or I'm that,
Mhm.
because with that word comes an understood like definition, right?
Mhm.
Boundaries,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so there for years, people asked me if I'm a witch. No, I don't want to be a witch, and so I would tell them like I'm a god. I don't want to be a witch.
Hmm.
And so they misunderstood that to think that I was being very arrogant, right? But I really think that each of us has that little piece of godliness inside of us.
Absolutely.
And so if you kind of step into that reality, then you would see that just being a witch is a limitation to what's your true nature and what you actually could
Exactly.
be. But it's like if it's that creation thing, right? Like if we can't visualize it, if we can't see it,
Mhm.
then we can't ever create it. So you asked
Mhm.
earlier, is the world going to change? Until people can see a different way, I don't. You know,
I guess it's up to us.
yeah. I mean, you have to be able to dream it, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
uh, the indigenous shamans say that we're actually living in a dream.
Mhm.
So the dream space that we inhabit when we sleep is more real and is truer to our nature than.
I heard that too. Yeah, it's like really that's when we're like awake in quotes, but and our what we perceive as reality when we're awake is really our sleep state.
Yeah,
It's really switched. So,
yes, because this is not all we are. This is
uh-uh.
a pale shadow to our true natures.
Mhm.
But I mean, this is what we have, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think there's a little cord of our spirit or soul that's tacked into these biological meat bags for whatever reason, right? I mean, I think we're supposed to feel all the feels. I think we're supposed to go through all the heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just But that's been helpful for me to look at that because it's like life's not happening to me. I thought it
Exactly.
was, right in my 20s and 30s. I thought, wow, this is horrible. Why me?
Yeah. I think a lot of people do that. It's like, why
Yeah,
me? And you think life is happening to you until you wake up and you realize, no, no, it's you're the creator. You need to do something.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, bad things were happening, but I was also living out the consequences of my decisions or lack of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say now that I'm very thankful for all of that because
Yep.
all that has perfectly prepared me to be right here, right now.
And I think when you get to the point that you can actually say that and say, there was a lot of shit in my life, but you know what? I'm glad it happened because now I'm the person that I feel like I want to be or should be.
Yes.
And once you can say that, I feel like you kind of came out on the other side. You still have growing to do, and I think you never stop learning, but I mean, you're at the end of the tunnel. I feel like I made it through, and I'm not saying that nothing bad ever will happen to me again, but I feel like it's a way of how you look at it. It's your perception. Is it a learning experience, or is it a lesson, and what can I learn from that? It's just like you kind of made it through, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're touching on a little facet of what I would call co-creatorship, right? And how
Uh-huh.
we create our reality. So instead of being a victim, I mean, and it's a shift, I mean, just really a spiritual awakening is a half a degree shift in how you, how your perception, how you look at things, right? And
Mhm.
what you think about things,
Mhm.
because you create that.
Mhm.
So if something quote unquote bad happens now, but you already realize that all these things are here to make you better, or there's a lesson in this. Now it doesn't seem
Mhm.
so bad. Now it's like,
Exactly.
okay, well, I'm going to get through this because
Mhm.
I, in
You always
reality, we,
do.
we always get through this,
You
right?
always, yeah, you always get through it.
I mean, maybe it's a bumpy road, maybe it's not, but we always get through it.
Mhm.
And so the value is, okay, so what do I learn from this?
Exactly.
So then it's not like you're dreading these things.
Mhm.
It's more of a welcoming. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So,
Yeah.
so now I'm going to level up. I'm going to catch a new skill or a new insight or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It, and then it's not, life isn't drudgery. I mean, for me, it sort of becomes a surprise every day, right? It's a wonderment.
Mhm.
And I really think that all humans deserve that, right? They
Mhm.
all deserve to live a life with some joy, with some happiness, and
Mhm.
this is wonderful, right? I
Yeah.
mean, our planet is a wonderful thing.
I think so too. It's like, I mean, in a way, yeah, stuff happens, but and I don't even want to get into aliens because that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down there. But when you look at our planet, I mean, we have mountains and valleys and beautiful beaches and, I mean, coasts of Ireland. I mean, if you ever seen that, I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful place we are allowed to live in right now. And it's like, I don't want to miss any of that. I want to experience all of that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you remove nations, one of the best things about the internet for me years ago is I was on Yahoo Chat, and I met people from all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Malaysia, South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
Romania, South America, everybody. And so chatting with them, I figured out something very. In all those chats, nobody ever discussed politics, right? Uh, Nobody ever discussed world policy or trade
Yeah.
policy. And what they all wanted is they wanted to live as happy and a comfortable life as they could. And they wanted better opportunities for their children than they had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of boiled that down and I took that as a common denominator for humanity, right?
Yeah.
And that's, kind of what I was saying earlier. We're not born with all these predispositions. I mean, this is the root thing of humans. Uh, that's the sort of thing I would like to see people lean into more, right? To,
Mm-hmm.
to not identify, maybe not label themselves as a Marxist or a communist or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? I mean, we're all human beings, and so every culture on the planet the indigenous people, they all had that at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just feel like the United States is just spiritually sick because we left all that, right? Historically, they left that, or it's been suppressed enough that people aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
The spiritual awakening movement is a multi-billion-dollar business, right? To the point where Palo Santo forests in South America are being jeopardized because Americans are buying
Yep.
chunks of
I
wood.
heard that. Mm-hmm.
And they say it's sustainably harvested. Well, how many dead limbs are out there, right? How many chunks of Palo Santo can you get off Amazon in one day? Um, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not. The Hindus are not looking for spiritual answers. They have it, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the Buddhists are pretty content with Buddhism. It's not. It only seems to be. It only seems to be right here, right in the United States.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what I see. That's what I see at the events. And people coming through and having questions, right? And what I think is, like I've seen a lot of people that maybe came from a Western religion. They were raised in that, and then at some point it didn't fit anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and so they transition, and now they come to the metaphysical community because it looks very attractive, right? So
Yeah.
we don't, we don't use terms like priest uh, or ties or uh, the Bible, like we don't. We don't talk about Jesus, but we will talk about a life coach, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll call it a love offering.
Yeah.
Uh, and we don't say Jesus so much, but we will say the universe.
Spirit, source.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
We call.
and,
Yeah.
and so what I've seen people coming and they're so used to somebody giving them the narrative, right? Tell them, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is what it is. This is what you should believe. And so they haven't actually started questioning for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come along and now here's somebody who's with a narrative, right? It's the same
Mm-hmm.
story. We're using different character names. There's a slight shift in there, but it's the same story, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are we praying or are we meditating? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I mean, what's the difference?
Is it prayer or is it manifestation? It's like it depends on how you look at it. It's the same thing. You know.
Yeah. And, and so I think, try to keep with the topic. And in that terms of connection, I think if you can connect to yourself or, to the fact that we're on this planet and we're all having this experience, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
actually go inward because I think that's the only direction that matters.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've run it. It's been a blessing. I run into people who are going through an awakening, and I always get the traumatic ones that find me, right? And so they
I think
they
that's the curse of a healer that you always get the ones who find your light.
yeah, and I think because that was my method for awakening. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what I find. You know, am I crazy? And I don't know. You tell me. Do you think you're crazy? Well, I don't think I'm crazy. Then they tell me what's happening. I was like, okay, so there's another. This could be that. I mean, I'm not telling
Mm-hmm.
you what it is, but it could be that.
Yeah.
And and I've always resisted when they ask for the story. Well, tell me the story. What's this mean? And I've always like kind of grabbed their head and turned it around. I was like, well, what do you think it means?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that's the only thing that, right? Terrence
Yes.
McKenna was
Exactly.
really right when he said, Terrence McKenna said that the only relevance all this has is what it means to us,
Mm-hmm.
because that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter what. Um, so like I love books on dream interpretation, right?
Okay.
So if somebody has a dream and then I've seen groups where they post it and then somebody will read to them what the interpretation is from a book. I was like, oh my God, right? I shy away from dream interpretation because your dream state is your subconscious mind. Nobody can interpret that dream but you, right?
Exactly.
I
Yes.
could tell you what I think it means from
Mm-hmm.
my lens,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that's what it means.
Exactly.
You actually have to sit with that
Mm-hmm.
and get comfortable in a conversation with your own intuition and decide what that means to you. Right?
Yeah.
Just like the same thing with communication with animals. So there's some great books out on animal talk and animal speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, what I found in communicating with nature is I see something and then you kind of got to blank your mind out. The first notion or idea that pops in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely communication. And it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
It, like, if you take the time, if you miss that and you take the time to Google it, now it's sort of it's sort of a wishful thinking because uh, very much the
Yeah.
Barnum effect on a lot of these things, right? So
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I love crystals too, but if you read the Crystal Bible, you will find maybe 150 stones in there that are all good for this thing,
Yes. Exactly.
right? 'Cause-
Mm-hmm.
so people carry these stones they have no affinity for because somewhere they read that it's good for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, so why don't you sit with the stone and
Mm-hmm.
because the truth of it is you can pick a piece of gravel up out of the driveway and decide this is my protective stone,
Exactly.
and it will be your protective stone.
Yes. A lot
Uh,
of times when I've done readings, which I don't do anymore as much, but sometimes in a reading it comes up that they're like, oh, I really want a crystal because I feel like I want to heal from this or do this or protection, and they always ask me, Bettina, which one, give me one. And I said, listen, the way it works is you need to let the crystal pick you. Don't go out and just buy something because somebody tells you to. Just go and browse and see what speaks to you, and this is the one, because they choose you.
that's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
And see again, that's shifting that sort of that responsibility
Uh-huh.
back
Exactly.
back onto the person.
They want a shopping list or some kind of a recipe that works for them, and that's when I feel like this is what they want. They want me to say do A, B, and Z, and then you get this result. But this is not how it works. It's all your recipe. It's your cauldron. It's your soup or whatever you're cooking up here. You are the creator.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of putting that right back on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that's always appealed to me about shamanics is because it's about direct revelation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a path or a dogma you need to follow or a ritual. It's about your relationship
Mm-hmm.
with spirit or your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
So I see I've actually been invited to a couple places to, um, they had South American Peruvian shaman coming up to teach, and they thought I'd be interested in going, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I love the colors they use. I love the things they do, but all those things are sort of what they do in the ritual steps is sacred to Peruvians or Andeans, right? Um, what their sacredness doesn't necessarily fit the sacredness in the Ohio River Valley, right?
Yeah.
It's a different set of important things there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't know. I mean, for me in my practice, it's been very like I get to decide what's sacred, what feels sacred to me, right? And I think that's also a hard thing for people because how do you know what's sacred? Right? I think until you recognize your own sacredness, what's sacred about you, once you see that, then that's sort of a lens you can look at other things and say, well, no, that's sacred. That's sacred to me. Because what's sacred to me might not be sacred to you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, there could be some things that are generally accepted as sacred,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, I think that's the important part, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about us. I don't. Um, I've never been that guy that is trying to save the planet and raise consciousness so we can move into
Why not? I think you're perfect for it. I
and,
think you're
and
part of it.
well, I like to think I'm doing my part by trying to
Yeah.
trying to become the
No,
best
I
version of
agree.
myself I can be. But yeah, I don't. That's a disconnect to me too.
Yeah.
Because while you're busy, I'm sure you've seen them. You've seen the wounded healer that they run out of spoons. They give so much of themselves, but there's nothing left for them. Um,
That is very true. That is very true. So
or
you think we got disconnected by what our parents, society, everybody that influences us,
yes, society. Yes, I
society.
think our whole culture is set up on a disconnect thing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean,
Do you think it benefits what I call the 1%? That I mean, it goes in a little bit more into conspiracy theory, and maybe I'm not. Maybe we shouldn't touch on this. Maybe we should wait for another episode. But I feel like that has something to do with control as well. You know, if you're disconnected, you're easy to control. Do you agree, or do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. But I don't. Uh, is it the 1%? I don't know. Because there
Or whatever
exists
you want to call it. Yeah.
there exists in the United States this poverty consciousness,
Yeah.
um, and it seems like people don't really care, right? It's more of a typical, very typical primate pecking order, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So nobody wants to be at the bottom, but
That's it.
as long as you're a couple steps up from the bottom, at least you got it. At least you got it better than somebody else. And so they never look above the rung on their ladder. They're always
Yeah.
looking at
Mm-hmm.
who's below.
Yeah.
You know? And there are the 1% became that way because they were looking up, right? And they wanted to get to the top rung.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, is that really a value? I mean, so it's how do we measure our worth? Do you measure your worth by how many rungs up the ladder you are, how many people are below you? Is that how our value is measured? Because I think here in the United States, that's very much how it's done. You know,
Yeah.
and they've done that for a while, right? The white picket fence and the two and a half kids and the two cars in the driveway. I mean, they were pitching that in the 60s and 70s. That you had to be middle class because now you've made it. You know,
Yeah.
and so well, yeah, we're middle class. Okay, we're good.
Good enough.
Good enough for
Yeah.
them. Uh, and I really want to believe if people spent more time in that sort of centered spiritual connection, they would realize that as a species, we're not thriving. As long as somebody is not, as long as there are people dying and there are the destitute and the poor, we are not thriving. It's not an admirable thing to have $400 million in the bank. I mean, I love looking at movie stars, and they're helpful. They do give a little bit, but somebody with a net worth of $500 million that donates $75,000 to cancer research, what is that really? What's $75,000 to them?
It's a band-aid. Something to
It,
make them help them sleep at night, maybe.
exactly. It helps them sleep at night, and it gives them good press. They could say we
Mm-hmm.
donated,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
But what is that donation? You know,
No. No.
I mean, uh, if a few of our billionaires could they they could solve continental hunger on 3 or 4 different continents and never miss the money, never miss the money.
I know.
But why doesn't that happen? You know,
It's crazy, isn't it?
it's yeah, it's sort of that hierarchy. I don't know. I mean, it goes back to antiquity. It's humans have been that way uh, forever.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a new thing. I mean, it's not.
No.
Um, it's not. The Romans did it with conquered. I mean, they weren't trying to spread Rome. They were trying to gather resources and oppress other people. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and, and so I think it's just something that sort of comes along with human nature. I think it's part of us having an opposable thumb because we have to grasp things and acquire things, and I think it's part of that forebrain. Like we have to, in order to have value for ourselves, then that value is we have to be in a position over somebody else has to be less than. You know.
Yeah. I agree.
Um,
And then when part of the topic is also and why it matters. So if we lost this connection, why does it matter? Why do you think it matters? Do you think because if we get the connection back, maybe we can end that endless cycle of just always trying to be better than somebody else? Or maybe you think civilization or humanity finally will be better overall? Or why does it matter?
but like I said earlier,
Huh.
I absolutely lean into what Gandhi said about as we change ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
as we change our own nature, then our relationship to the world changes. Um,
Okay.
and if you look at the current climate over here, and I won't go into politics, but regardless where you are on the political fence, everybody I ask, I say, "Wow, crazy times, huh?" And
Yeah.
they all look at me and they say, "Yes."
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge common denominator, right?
That's
So if
correct.
all parties agree this is crazy, why are we still doing it? You know,
It's a good question.
like any side would agree that this is nuts,
Mm-hmm.
and yet here we are, and we're still doing it. I just don't understand that, right?
Yeah.
So kind of the same thing with COVID. As a spiritualist, when COVID came along, I was amazed by the notion that so many people just realized that they're going to die someday, right?
Yes,
Like,
that's true. Maybe some sooner than later, but
like, oh my
yeah,
God,
we're all dying. I mean, we're actively dying. Maybe not tomorrow, or maybe not next year, but it is what it. I mean, that's what it is.
absolutely. I was like, wow, you're 48 years old, and you just realized you're not getting out of this alive. I mean, and the media didn't help, so they sort of spun fear around this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, for me, I understand this is a very temporary arrangement, right? Like, I don't know how many days I have left. So
Yeah.
I choose now to spin it all and the best way I can, right? So
Yeah.
try to be as positive and upbeat about it. And, I don't take things for granted. And I had hope that maybe COVID would be the thing that spurred people to realize that, like, hey, wait, like nothing's guaranteed. So maybe I should shift the way I look at things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think that happened enough because people got so tied up in the story they were spinning with the media.
Yeah.
Uh, they spin it with politics now. That's that disconnection. Yes, you're absolutely right. As long as they keep us focused on other things instead of turning inside, then uh, we're not effective in maybe stopping the craziness, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's like because I work with guys and every day they're like, "Oh, did you see what happened?" I was like, "No, I didn't." Because for me, I'm hunkered down. What's real to me is the sun, the sunrise and the sunset, the length of the day. That's very real to me. Daylight savings time is not real to me, right? So the sun comes up, it goes down. I look outside to see the weather, and I know that I feel pretty healthy, and the things that reside in the house here with me are very healthy, and that's my bubble of influence, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I'm getting by. Um,
Yeah.
and I do feel very unplugged from that sort of fear control and that manipulation.
I think it makes life a little easier if you try to just focus on something else. Not focus on something else, but like go within and find that connection.
Yes,
I feel like you're less fear based, knowing that maybe your soul or whatever you believe in is eternal, and this is just temporary. And we're all go back to source at some point.
yes, very very temporary. And the people I talk to,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like that I run into at the store or whatever, or just strangers on the street. Um, Maybe I've just been very lucky, but the ones I talk to are very friendly. There's no, uh, there doesn't seem to be animosity. The only thing I might see is some fear because they're,
Yeah.
they're having anxiety about what hasn't. I'm like, oh no, sister, stay now, right? Like you're okay now.
Yeah.
Well, what if? I was like, what if? So what if, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't do anything about it, so just sort of stay right here,
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I sort of wonder the reality that the news and media paints because I don't see it in my world. Um, I see the effects of their storyline in my world, but
Yeah.
I don't see the things that they say, right? So I don't know. It's maybe I'm delusional and I'm living in a different sort of reality, but I'm very happy where I'm at. I'm very
Yeah.
connected, very centered. So
I was going to say, even if I'm crazy, well, I'm happy crazy, but people say that if you are the one questioning whether or not you're crazy, you're not the crazy one.
right,
And so I feel confident in that. So, I feel
yeah,
like I'm happy where I'm at and I'm happy with what I believe is true, and it makes my life easier and better, and that's what matters.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see. Um, Yeah, I can't speak for other countries because I really don't know. I mean, I think most other countries have kept some sense of connection to the land, and they've kept some sense of connection to their ancestry, and I mean, I really feel that because the
Mm-hmm.
folks I talk to that come from other parts of the world, they talk about those things, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I would like to see us here in the United States develop that. You know, I would like them to start seeing, you know, the animals is not just an animal, but that's our relative, right? So, you know, we have winged relatives, we have four-legged relatives. Uh, if they can do that and start realizing that we're all like there's a system, everything's connected. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, if they can start seeing themselves in relationship uh, in relation to the animal part of the world, maybe they'll start seeing themselves in relation to other humans and see us all sort of as that family. Um, then I think we could really change things. You know,
I agree.
and I don't think it has to be. I don't think it has to be everybody. Not every, because you're never going to get everybody to see it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think if you can get a preponderance of people to see it that way, uh, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not a 10-year plan. Maybe it's a 50-year plan. You
Yeah.
know, maybe it's a
Maybe we
100-year
won't.
plan.
Yeah. We
Maybe we
probably
get our
won't see
young
it in
kids.
our lifetime. Who knows?
Yeah,
I
maybe
don't.
we get the young kids looking at it that way now, and
Yep.
then by the time
I
their
agree.
parents or grandparents, and maybe they've changed the programming that they pass on to their children. You
Yeah.
know,
It's true.
um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, my parents were pre depression babies, and so I was raised very much with sort of that um, same American values stuff the baby boomers had, right? Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
go to school, get a job, work hard, work the same job 50 years, make something yourself, right?
Yeah.
You got to have property, then now you're a thing. Uh, I've
Yeah.
unlearned all that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I did my share of passing that sort of programming on to my kids. Um,
Well, we all do some of that, you know.
yeah, yeah. If I had to go back and redo it, I would probably teach them not to play in traffic. I'd put the baby food under the counter where they could reach it at 5 or 6, and say, "Well, here, you know, feed
Good
yourself if
luck,
you're
kid.
hungry. If you
Good
don't
luck.
want to, if you don't want to go to school, don't go to school." I mean, I,
Yeah.
I think they should learn to read and write, but beyond that, I don't. You know, I use geometry a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah,
nothing
I
else
know.
I learned in school that I use really, right? So,
No.
uh,
Well.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you are a very, very powerful healer, and I know you've been to some events that I have planned, and people come in to see you, and they come in, they go straight to like, "Where's Jim? Point me to Jim." So I know that you have a lot to give. And if somebody, do you do any private sessions for people? If somebody wants to reach you, is there any way they can reach you, or um,
Um, yeah, I had a healing space set up here in my home for a while, but I don't have that right now. But I am willing. I'm a mobile service, so if somebody wants a session, I'm more than happy to throw my table uh, in the car and take off to them.
yeah, is there like an email where they can reach you?
Uh, yes, James P Ditty at gmail.com, or it's on my website too. I have a contact form through the website, but I don't know how much longer I want to have the website. I may have that in about, I may lose that here in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of reinventing myself, so
Well, that's what it's all about.
I'm sort of unplugging. I'm pulling back from the social media and the business page, and what
Yep.
I what I would dearly love to have is a piece of property somewhere like out in the woods, and
Isn't wouldn't that be cool? That's kind of one of my goals too. You know, just away from all the distractions.
yes, yeah, I'd like to be out there in a semi-earth home, and if somebody wanted the healing, then they would come and stay
Yeah,
for 4 or 5 days, and
that would be awesome.
yeah, that would be that would yeah, my dog. That would be my
They're
goal.
part of the family.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're coming back. So this was not the only time we get to talk to you, and this was not the only time that you will share your wisdom with us. But I'm so glad that you did, and this was such an enjoyable hour. And it went by. I mean, it felt like 5 minutes. So I'm hope you're coming back, and
Oh, you
the
bet. I'd love
viewers
to.
and listeners will see more of you. And we'll be able to get more of your wisdom and knowledge.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been a
Well,
pleasure.
thank you so much. And yeah, for everybody else, if you want to book a session, email him, and I can only um, attest that he's one of the really, really good, powerful healers. So,
Well,
and
thank
we'll
you very
see you.
much.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, everybody, and hang in there. Bye bye.